Hello and welcome to episode 2 of ADHD Founder Talking. I'm Michael Jakubiak, founder of MD Action, and I would like to welcome today's guest, Purvi Kay. Purvi is head of governance, risk and compliance in one of the biggest defense companies in the world. She's also a TEDx speaker, but what's most important, she's a neurodiversity advocate and ally. Purvi. Hello, Purvi. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you, Michael. It's such a pleasure to be doing this alongside with you. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you. Pleased to have you in here.
Thank you.
Purvi, so why we here? What are we talking about today? I think that's an important part.
Absolutely. Tell me, Michael, tell me. What do we want to talk about today?
Yeah, so we meet today to talk about trust, how to rebuild the trust within neurodivergent communities, and why are we talking about it? It's because I got inspired actually at one of the events when I met a girl which told the story. How did she disclose to her employer that she's neurodivergent, and she was completely ignored. She said she was told that she's lying, that she doesn't have this issue, and of course she left the company.
Wow.
But what it caused is when she was with a new employer, she didn't have faith to disclose any further information. So she decided to deal with her pain, not disclosing and doing things which are not aligned with her natural behaviors, because she was afraid to disclose any information past her experience. So I think that's what inspired me actually to discuss this topic.
Excellent. I mean, it's quite a shame that that's happened. That shouldn't really be happening anywhere. But in one way, that inspiration is something you're taking forward in a positive way and doing something about it, so that you don't have to meet another girl or a boy or a man or a woman having that same experience in the future.
Yeah, completely agree. But before we start digging a bit more into a topic, I would like to find out how did it happen? What makes you so passionate about the topic that you're a neurodiversity ally?
Sure. So I've been in the cybersecurity world for about 11 years now. And during my time working for government in cybersecurity, I worked alongside many colleagues who are super talented and had something special about them. And I could see that that people see them differently. People spoke to them differently. People treated them differently. And yet what I was seeing is their competence. I was saying their intelligence, the way they worked, the way they were, the output and the productivity. And as I got into leadership positions as well, I could see how there was a bit of an imbalance in teams as well, where you'd have simple things like X, Y, and Z would be spoken about in an ill manner because they were not attending office parties, for example, or because in meetings they were not vocal enough. So they probably don't have anything valuable to say, but yet behind the scenes, I could see that same individual being the most productive team member and actually coming up with the most innovative, most out of the box ideas. So I started looking at this pattern amongst the individuals. I'm a people person. I love to analyze people. So I started looking at these patterns, and that's when the term neurodiverse is something that I became familiar with at that time. And when I started looking into it, I realized what neurodiversity actually meant. Of course, I was aware of the term ADHD and autism, but having that neurodiversity, if you like, tagline or name, I didn't know what that meant, and it got me really intrigued and interested. But more importantly, what I was seeing was unfair treatment of this neurodiverse community, and that is what I wanted to change. Over time, I developed a passion for changing the way the neurodiverse community was being treated at work. But also, these colleagues had become my friends. So for me, it was using my voice to help them and do something for them. Because some of my colleagues who are autistic and who had ADHD were not vocal enough, did not want to raise their voice, did not want to also declare, as you said, declare that they had dyslexia or that they were on the autistic spectrum, simply because of the stigma against them, and also simply because they thought, if I do declare, I may be overseen for promotion, or I may not be given new opportunities because of the traditional perception of, neurodiverse individuals. And I really took it upon me to make a change. I wasn't one to say, I'm going to change the world. You are doing that. But I was like, I just want to help my colleagues and I want to help my friends. And I started speaking out for them. And then in government, as I got into senior positions, because I'm from a BAE background, Asian, and because I'm a female in a male-dominated field like cybersecurity, I usually got invited to panel events and discussions and conferences to talk about diversity and inclusion. And this is the topic that I used to bring up all the time. We talk about women in cybersecurity a lot. It gets a lot of airtime. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about neurodiversity. And a lot of times I say, about what? What does that mean? So that made it very clear to me that a lot of people, like I was, a lot of people are unaware of what all this is about. And if you're unaware of it, how are you going to do anything to change it? So it became, a huge passion and mission for me to become a neurodiversity ally. And because I love public speaking, I get a lot of public speaking opportunities. For me, it is using that platform and using my voice to champion my neurodiverse friends and colleagues.
That's very inspirational, I think that's one of the additional reasons why we're talking today as well.
Thank you.
So when we're discussing this topic related to trust and neurodiversity, I think it's worth to mention that we need to look at this from two different angles, because it will a different way how employers look at neurodivergent and neurodiversity, and different ways how employees and candidates perceive that as well. So I think it's worth to mention that we need to touch this on two different sides. And
absolutely.
So on the employer's point of view, what do you think, like what the managers needs to do to improve the situation?
Now, I was one of them. I was a manager to neurodiverse individuals, and I'll be very honest, I didn't know how to manage, and many people don't. And somebody once said it's the elephant in the room, that neurodiverse individuals are very difficult to manage. So I think the first step for line managers is that acknowledgement. If your employee has declared that they're neurodiverse, have the open, transparent conversation with them. And what does that mean? If you don't know, find out, what does that mean? What does that mean from the perspective of how they present themselves at work, how they want to present themselves at work? And when I say that, I mean how they want to present their authentic selves at work and not have to mask, which is really, really draining for a lot of people and takes a toll on a lot of people. So how do your employees want to present themselves in an authentic way? That's one thing. How do they process information? How do they learn? How do they want to be tasked? Now, here's the thing. As a line manager, as a good leader, you should be having this discussion with all your staff members, regardless of who they are. So this is not me saying you should treat neurodiverse employees in a certain special way. You should be having these discussions. But what the line manager should know is they should expect different answers from their neurodiverse employees. For example, one would say, yep, I don't mind you tasking me with 10 things in one go and I'll go and tackle them and you prioritize for the. Whereas a neurodiverse individual might say, I need you to task me with one thing so I can focus on that. And when I've completed that, you can task me on another. And a line manager should be okay with that. And that sort of conversation needs to happen. That transparency, continuous conversation, openness needs to happen between line managers and employees. And as you said, it's a two-way thing. Employees, not all neurodiverse employees will feel comfortable disclosing, but I think this is where the organization needs to be visibly showing that they're embracing neurodiverse employees. Mm-hmm. Whether they're declaring or not, they need to show that we're embracing neurodiverse employees. We are doing everything possible within the organization to create the environment that where neurodiverse employees can thrive. And we're listening to their needs and their requirements. And not only that, but we want to include you in decision making. If you do that, then the neurodiverse individuals that don't want to declare will probably open up because they're now in a safe space to do so.
Sure. So how do you reassure that those individuals that they can disclose that? And to do this, I believe you need to provide a specific training to the managers. What would you do to improve this?
Absolutely. This is where I said about I myself as a manager didn't know how to manage, and I've learned. Learning from your neurodiverse employees is first the best thing. Training from them, understanding them better is the first thing. But there are so many out there. There's so many recruiters. There's so many other organizations that that have neurodiversity and training provisions in place. They have courses, they have accreditations in place where they can go in and do a gap analysis in the organization and understand what's missing for your organization, and then help you with that training as well. So organizations need to go and seek external help to get their training in. Make it part of your diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives as well. Neurodiversity should be one of the work streams within D&I in the organization, and through those work streams they get the funding for training. It needs to be more strategic. It needs to come from the top.
So what would be the first person you would approach, or the first thing you would do to ensure that the managers are trained? What would be your advice?
Well, I think this is not a one team sort of effort or anything like that. It's an organizational working where HR needs to be involved in it. So, for example, we make health and safety training mandatory for any new joiners or line managers. We make leadership training mandatory for line managers. Now we even got data protection because of the regulatory needs around that. Who knows? At some point we'll have AI training. Why can't we make things like training on neurodiversity management as a mandatory training? It should be mandatory. We've got even things around diversity and inclusion training on there. Put neurodiversity on there, but specifically for line managers of how you manage neurodiverse individuals. And if the HR have identified neurodiverse individuals, then target the specific line managers, give them extra level of training.
Beautiful. That's a very good advice. Additional thing I think which is important in this topic are policies. So you as a company, I think that's why we're also touching the line management training, because we can be with an organization which may have the best policies in the world, but even if you have the best policies in the world and people don't know about them, what's inside, they won't know how to act about it. And I've got example from one of my previous jobs when I was in the company, when they have really brilliant policies. And one of this, which is my suggestion to any employers, is to include in your policies that the line management has a possibility to make a decision which are outside of the policy if he identifies that this may help the person. And that was what was in the policy. And I think that was a brilliant policy. But guess what? Manager didn't know about it.
There you go. So that awareness, raising awareness on the policies as well. Yes. The point on policy I would make as well is make sure the policies are not created just by neurotypical individuals. Make sure that neurodiverse employees are part and parcel of the policy making, because eventually they're the ones who are impacted the most. So they should be making the decisions on the policy as well.
Beautiful. And have you got examples of any tools which may help with that, or will help with improving neurodiversity?
I don't necessarily have any ideas on tools, but I know someone who does.
You know someone who does? Who is
That's
it?
You. Tell us about. When you talked about tools, that's the first thing that came to mind about the app that you're working on. So tell me a little bit about the app, because that's the only thing I know about so far.
So the app is gonna help to hire people, but I think you know what? I actually will describe 1/12 of the app, because the app I'm developing is very complex. But the most important aspect in relation to our topic is neurodiversity passport, and I think that's a tool which is worth to describe in here. And it's basically a tool which will help you to get the best out of your employees. So it's focused on your strength and what you need to do as an employer to get the best out of person. And sometimes the simple, sometimes there's simple question, just give a bit more flexibility, allow me to stay longer. But sometimes there are more advanced technologies, like give me noise cancelling headphones, or make sure that I don't have many distractions because I'm very I'm very sensory aware. So there's loads of aspects which we need to consider. And I think the thing is that employer not always can ask these questions. So that's why people like me are in place, and the tools I'm developing. But there are also things which employer himself can do as well to improve the level of inclusivity and improve the way our neurodiversity works in the business. And there are employee surveys.
Yes.
There are employee surveys, and when you think about why employee survey may be useful if no one will answer to this. So with employee surveys, no answer is an answer, an indication for you as well. So like when you've got a lacting paper, if you want to check how acidy is the soap. For me, when I think about the employee surveys, that's how they work in terms of describing inclusivity in the company. If we've got 100 people business who do the employee survey on diversity, and there is no one who discloses neurodiverse, we know it's impossible because of the stats we're dealing with. 1 in 6 of us is neurodiverse. In cybersecurity, it's estimated that over 30% of us is neurodiverse. So if we've got 100 employees and no one discloses neurodiverse, that means something's wrong with your inclusivity in the organization. And that's the things which employers should look at. And what do you think is important employer can do to improve inclusivity within the organization?
I think number one, the one thing they shouldn't do, you shouldn't make it a tick box exercise. Okay. So one thing employers should do is, like one of the things I said before, this should be championed from the top, right? I really believe it. If you can see it, you can beat kind of mantra, right? Imagine if your leaders are opening up and saying, I'm neurodiverse, this is how I learn, this is our process, and there's no stigma attached to this. I'm accepted as I've actually climbed up the ladder, and I'm a senior now in your organization. You can do it too. I think that visibility from the top and that championing from the top is really, really valuable and important, because that allows other neurodiverse employees as well to look at them and think, hang on a second, I can open up about my needs, and there will be no stigma. I will be treated fairly because, my seniors are there supporting me. That is quite a valuable lesson. The other thing for me is the second thing I said before as well, including neurodiverse individuals in decision making. So this is not just about facilities, for example, where, what sort of lighting do they need that does not impact them? What sort of quiet spaces do they need to work better in? It's not just about that. It's, as you said, it's about including them in policies, including them in decision making on more strategic stuff around the organization. In every aspect of whatever we do, we make sure that we've got ethics involved, right? Why don't we make sure we've got neurodiverse individuals involved to make sure does that look good? Does that comply? Does that will that be aligned to your needs, to your requirements? If not, what can we do better on this? In every strategy, in every policy, they should be involved in the decision making as well. So championing from the top and including neurodiverse staff within decision making. Those are two big important things. Of course, there's a lot more employers can do, but before they can do anything, they need to be trained. They need to be aware. They need to know what is going on in other organizations as well, and they need to learn from organizations that already do these things properly. We have in government, we've got GCHQ, where a huge percent of the employees are neurodiverse, and they have put in amazing support mechanisms for these employees. What are they doing? We have private sector organizations as well that have got neurodiverse hubs within their organization. What do those hubs offer? To learning from other organizations as well and tailoring it for their own is another good thing that employers can do.
It looks like it's all about common sense at the end of the day.
Yes, that's right. And it's common sense that's not very common, right?
I agree. And when we talk about it, I've got in my head like the old times when have only men in parliament, and they decided about the whole society. How would it work? The good example was over the abortion. So how men can decide what's going on with the woman's body,
Exactly.
So you need a representation of everyone to make informed decisions.
And the other benefit for employers in having that representation across the board is the diversity of thought, the diversity of ideas. I think it's common knowledge that organizations that have diverse workforce are the most productive or the most thriving organizations. So it is common sense to make sure they are a fully inclusive organization.
Yeah, I think it's also about like realizing the benefits, when you create an inclusive environment, even though it's not always about new employees, it's about what you currently got in place as well, and how to improve the current situation, what you can do.
That. Yes.
Yeah, and when you think about more inclusive environment, it will be better results, as you said, because people feel more safe.
Yes, people, and you retain your employees then, because they're in the right environment. You've created the right. They feel included. They are included. They are part and parcel of the organization. And that's when you retain your workforce.
I agree. And to keep this inclusion and to keep retaining your workforce, I think here is worth to mention the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And when you look at this, the sense of security and safety is on top of that. And it's like with disclosing information, you just need to feel safe and secure and create an environment when you can do this. And the question is why anyone would like to disclose in the first place. I think that's additional question. And from my side, I would say it's for our own and employers' sake. Imagine like when we're talking about neurodiversity, there is loads of camouflaging involved. So that's a very common trait. When you basically, I think the easiest for someone to understand is like mask, as you said before, but also basically put yourself in the shoes so you can conform with rest of society.
You're trying to fit in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's very common, and it's also very exhausting. So now when you suddenly create an inclusive environment, when someone can open up, disclose how he feels, disclose how he actually works, what you can do to work at your best, it's a benefit for both sides, because imagine all of this energy, which was used for masking, camouflaging, fitting in, could be used in a much better productive way.
Absolutely. I always say that the whole thing about fitting in, I always say it's for neurodiverse individuals, employees, it's not those employees that have to change to fit into the organization. It is the organization that has to change to welcome the neurodiverse employees and make them comfortable within the work environment. So it's the other way around.
And the question for you as a manager, if you're dealing with people and you don't know if they are neurodivergent or not, are you able, or you've got any indication for others how maybe to spot it or what to look at, in terms of behaviors?
Yeah. So with the talks I do, the conferences, events I go to as well, I've built a network of neurodivergent friends, including yourself. And I'm learning from them, right, as a manager, right, and also trying to embed some sort of training for other line managers within the organization, right. But even when you are trained and you think you can spot some of these behaviors, it's not necessary that you'll always get it right, you'll always get it spot on. So for me, the reliance is always on the individual telling me, on my staff telling me. But the problem there is, like we said, not everybody wants to declare. So one of the things we did was in a team meeting, we have a quarterly team away day. I brought in a neurodiverse consultant. She herself is neurodiverse. I mean, you know her as well, Holly Foxtrot.
Of course, she's
So
brilliant.
she's brilliant, isn't she? Exactly. So I invited her to one of our team meetings to do a bit of a presentation about the different ways in which we think, learn, and process information. And her being neurodiverse herself, she sort of talked about herself and her masking and all that, everything. And we talked about the different neurodiverse behaviors, traits, and different ways we learn, process, but also what that means for us as a team and how we can work together. And there are people there that hadn't ever declared that they're neurodiverse. As a result of that team meeting where we opened up the topic to everybody without targeting any individuals, we just opened up the whole team. As a result, I had a couple of people in the team come up to me and said, because of that, I had a feeling, and this is a problem. Sometimes people don't want to declare because they just feel there'll be a stigma, or they don't want to declare because they don't know. They haven't been assessed.
Or may I add, or they don't want another label.
They don't want another label. There you go. Exactly. So as a result, a couple of people came to me and said, because of that opening up the discussion and, teaching the team about this, I looked inwards and looked at the different ways I behave and thought, oh, actually, this aligns to what was being said. And they went and got an assessment. Then they realized, and why they behave the way they do. But they felt comfortable enough to declare it to their managers and other people because that made others aware. And now the way they're treated in the team or the way they're communicated with in the team is different. The way they're tasked is different. It's changed. So you don't have to go asking individuals, are you neurodiverse? I think you are. I think you're on the autism. You don't do that, right? You create an environment where people feel safe to declare. And once they've declared, you put those plans and actions in place of how you work collaboratively together.
Mm-hmm. And what was the biggest difference which you saw in the team before the meeting, before people declared, and after?
I think a bit more of a relaxed environment after, in that people who are not very vocal before were actually willing to stand up and talk and say things, and because they weren't worried about what others would think of them, of how they've said this or how they presented themselves. I think people are feeling a bit more, they were feeling they could be more authentic. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. It just this brings me at the end of the day, this is inclusion, what we're talking about now. That's basically what it is.
One other thing we did is for that meeting, Holly said get some fidget toys, and we spread all the fidget toys around. And now what we've done is every meeting we do, we put fidget toys on the table, and we just let people take them, play with them. So we take them to conferences as well and put fidget toys there and say play, because and another thing we did because of Holly's meeting with us, we did a mentoring conference straight after that, in a few weeks after that. And in the conference, we put the fidget toys out, we told people about them, and we even said it was a conference room in a big hotel, so it can be noisy. So we said we've put quiet rooms for you, for everybody. We didn't know how many neurodiverse individuals will be there, whether there'll be any. We didn't know that. This was a mentoring conference. Mm-hmm. So we said, we've got quiet spaces for you, for anybody that wants to take time out or wants to take a call, for whatever you want to use a quiet space. You can go there at any time during the conference, up to you. So we set those up as well. So those are just tiny little steps we took to be inclusive as possible.
Brilliant. That's that's a consideration which hasn't been considered before, didn't it?
Never was before, yeah. And again, it's just talking about it more and learning about it more that you start taking those baby steps.
Yeah, this in terms of consideration, and this again reminds me from how gay rights came out. From the moment when being gay was illegal to the moment how everything is now open, and it was a long journey. It was a disease. dozen years ago, it's not disease anymore because
And
we
that's
are more aware.
exactly the same with neurodiversity, where for me, my mission is to pivot mindsets to think neurodiversity doesn't necessarily have to be a disability. I know sometimes I know within the Office of the Statistics, they've considered neurodiverse statistics within the disability statistics, but I want to remove that because it doesn't, yes, there are some individuals that need medication, and neurodiverse spectrum is huge, and the neurodiversity, like there's ADHD, autism, there's dyslexia. I know there's huge areas of it, so we can't put everybody in the same box either, and I don't want to. But it also doesn't have to be a disability. It's an actual talent. It's a power. And people need to realize that potential within themselves, or what those neurodiverse traits can do for them. It's huge, especially in the tech industry, in the cyber industry, in the creative arts industry. Look at you, Michael. Look at how much you're achieving, right? Since you have declared to the world about your neurodiversity, you have no longer needing to mask. You're just going for it, and you're using your skills, your behaviors, your talents, and putting them to good use.
Thank you very much, Purvi. No, it wouldn't happen without you. At the end of the day,
it's all you. I've done nothing.
It all needs to start somewhere, you know.
Well, it might be the catalyst, but you've just gone off like a rocket been launched into space. So that's just brilliant.
Thank you. When we talk about it, and we talk about inclusion and what neurodivergent people can do. So first, I think I would like to mention one thing from one of the events I was on. It was a diversity panel, and whole 40 minutes discussion, not even once mentioned the word inclusivity. And that tells a lot. What's your thoughts about it?
Sometimes there are diversity panels and discussions for the sake of tick box, you know, and that's what we've got to change, right? We don't want to have diversity initiatives, D&I taglines, D&I work streams, all that stuff, just to show that you're doing something about it. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to have the right people, and that's the other thing. Sometimes these initiatives are led by people who don't know a lot about that area or aren't willing to learn about it. So they're led by the wrong people. This is where you get the issue of not even once was inclusivity mentioned. So either the wrong people, either tick box exercise, and that's what we need to change.
And what do you think neurodivergent people can do? So
neurodiverse people can do a lot, and it's like what is it that they can't do? You know, they're just people. They're just people like everyone else. The only thing is they think differently. So for me, it's let's harness that different thinking power and make use of it in the right places. For example, the pattern thinking abilities that neurodivergent individuals have, the hyper focus they have. You know, for cybersecurity, for example, somebody who's autistic, they have an amazing ability to differentiate malicious and non-malicious code, right? And we use automation right now to do that. Even that can make mistakes. But a neurodiverse individual has a brilliant pattern thinking ability where they can differentiate that. And they can find tiny errors, mistakes in loads of coding, you know, things like that. Hyper-focus, working on one thing for a long period of time. Someone like me, this is the thing what's happening with my neurodiverse colleagues I was working with. They would be working on one problem for such a long period of time, not giving up until they've solved it. And I can't take it anymore. I don't have the patience. I can't do this. Right? That's different. They're going to solve it, and I've given up. You see? So there's so much that they can do, which is different to somebody who's neurotypical. And it's getting that talent, identifying that talent, and matching it with the right role. That's what we need to get spot on.
I think from my side, to add to what you just said, is to listen, don't assume, because you never don't know what the person you're dealing with experienced before. And it doesn't matter if it's neurotypical or neurodivergent. It refers to everyone, and I think we all should remember that. We never know who is on the other side, what he went through, what was his challenges, what was his life, and what the baggage he's carrying, and not everyone will disclose that. So that's why we cannot assume. We need to listen, and I think that's what will improve the situation. That's my add-on to what you just said.
Absolutely. And to summarize it all, embrace individuality. Embrace everyone for who they are, how they are, regardless of their background, regardless of their gender, regardless of anything. We're all individuals, and we should be treated as individuals.
I absolutely agree with that.
So tell me, Michael, why have you decided to do this podcast on neurodiversity with me? And what does this mean for you?
So outside of the brilliant credentials I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's you're inspiration for me, and you're the person who started the ball rolling in me discovering me being neurodivergent. And it all started at the Future of Cyber conference last year, when you've been running a panel on neurodiversity. That's when we met. That's when I heard the topic the first time. And I started exploring it straight away. 2 weeks after the event, when I met you and heard about neurodiversity, I partnered with the company which recruit only autistic individuals into cyber. And that's how I started exploring the topic more. So naturally, I started talking more with neurodivergent individuals who are happy to talk about it. So I was more exposed to this. And I came across then a candidate who's also a neurodiversity advocate. And he started talking to me, describing the stories about neurodivergent individuals he was dealing with, and describing different stories he came across. And I was listening to him, and I was just thinking, it's me. Like, the more he was talking, it felt like I was listening about myself, you know. And it's different when I was talking with the candidates or watching like some videos, but when I start actually talking with people who tells me about their experience, and it feels exactly like me. So I remember I left this conversation with this like a feeling inside that I need to. I explored the topic before, but I felt like I needed to do it much more thorough. So I remember came back home, and whole evening, I think I was watching probably since 6 p.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning, loads of different videos about neurodiversity and neurodivergent individuals, different opinions from doctors, HR people, neurodivergent individuals, and literally I think I saw this all, you know, and I was reading this. It felt like it was with every video. It felt like a revelation, when I felt more like the baggage I was carrying. I don't know how to even describe it properly, but it felt like something was strange with me. I always felt I was a bit different, and suddenly it all started to make more sense. You know, it was like a lift of your shoulder, you know, with every video. I remember I watched those videos with doctors and with other HR professionals, and I watch this and they talk more about this, and it makes so much more sense, you know, the way I communicate with people, the way how sometimes I could be sensory overload, the way I can focus, and why when I was always very good at study. I know not everyone is, but it was because of this focus I had in the evenings. I was able to sit down at 8 p.m. and sit God knows to what a.m. in the morning until I actually learn and complete the task or complete the education. And this was such a lifting experience, you know.
The aha moment for you.
Yeah, it was. And I remember when I've got teary eyes now when I think about it, because it was lift off your shoulder. And that's why I encourage everyone who suspects, you know, that or thinks that something's different with him. It's you are different, but nothing's wrong with you. You're absolutely fine. It's the only difference is that you process information slightly different. And what I thought before is my burden, it's become my strength, you know.
That, Michael, is such a powerful message, and the audience can't see you, but I can, and I can just see how important this is for you, how emotional you're getting about this. which just shows how powerful you telling your story is. And I'm sure it's going to inspire and motivate a lot of your audience members as well to do something in terms of, if they suspect, like you said, to do something about it, like you. And the fact that you said that burden you felt on your shoulders has become your strength now. Look how much you have achieved in such a short period of time.
I agree,
With that strength.
When I think about it, and that's why, and I think that's why you're here, because if I wasn't at this conference, I haven't heard you, I wouldn't start exploring the topic. And I started my diagnosis in February this year, so not as long ago. But since then, it feels like my life, my career, everything speeds up like 10 times more. And it's because you don't need to fit in. You just need to be yourself, and yourself is enough.
And yourself is more than enough, because you're starting to be yourself. You are thriving now, because finally the real Michael has turned up. It's fantastic to see, Michael. It's just amazing to see the progress you've made in a very short period of time. I keep following everything you're doing, and I have no doubt that you are going to change the world, like you say.
Thank you, Purvi. We will change the world, and I think that people like you, like Holly, and everyone in our community are important to reach this goal. Because each of us is a part of the puzzle, which all create this massive picture, which we all try to change, improve.
Yeah. Together we're stronger, absolutely.
Purvi, we're coming to the end of the discussion. We talked quite a lot now, but thank you very much for your time, for having you here. I really appreciate that. Before we finish, your last word of advice.
You rock. No, look, you're amazing. You're amazing. For those who are listening, this is not just us putting another podcast out there. This is us reaching out. This is us putting a call to action to everybody there. For employers, there's a lot more you can do for your neurodiverse employees. So, don't assume you've got it. Make sure you are being as inclusive as possible. For employees who are neurodivergent, see what you can do to create that safe space within your organization, so you can declare. And like you said, as soon as you don't have to fit in and you can be your authentic self, the world's your oyster.
And that's an inspirational finish, I would say, for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Thank you very much for joining, Purvi. Thank you very much for everyone who was listening to our podcast, and hopefully you are enjoying what we've been talking about. Thank you very much.